COVID-19 has absolutely made its presence known. We're now middle of March and things are changing very quickly. And in fact, I would go as far as to say Thursday of last week, today is Monday, was a very different Thursday and a very different week. And
Right.
quickly we're seeing changes play out in our businesses, in our countries, in our families, in our communities. And these are moving very, very quickly. My name's Trevor Munven. I'm here with Eric Deschamps and Rob Dale from Rhapsody Strategies. And we wanted to take a little bit of time to talk to you about what we're learning and seeing and hearing in all of the conversations we're having with business leaders and with our clients. And really just to touch base and connect with you and begin a process working together to share what we're learning, to give you pragmatic and useful tools, resources, and insights, some of which we've been developing. Some are going to be coming from clients, some from resources that you can absolutely trust. Public health will point the way to that, and we'll provide an additional set of resources over time that will continue to update. But we thought, why don't we just start with a bit of a conversation about where we are today?
Mm.
And I want to talk about, maybe if it's all right, Erica, I'll probably start with you here around leadership first, because these are anxious times and it's requiring a whole other level of leadership than many people are accustomed to or used to. For some, maybe even more than they're ready for. How do we prepare them, and what are we seeing in terms of how to lead in a context like this?
Well, I mean, for most leaders, this is new territory. They haven't led through this kind of season in their life, in their business. And regardless of what one feels about what's in the news and all over social media, I think for the last several weeks, a lot of leaders have been asking themselves a question. Is this thing for real? How real is it? What's the impact
Mm.
going to be? And to your point earlier, even up until last Wednesday, Thursday, it seemed like, okay, there's going to be some impact, but perhaps it won't be what we think it'll be. And then here we are, Monday, March 16th, and it's a very different world that we live in. The important thing for leaders is now is not a time for panic.
Mm.
We get
Mm.
that there's a lot of anxiety. We're all leaders here on this call. We have a business to be responsible for. We have families, we have children. This is impacting us on many, many fronts, and so anxiety is quite normal. And if you're feeling anxious, you're not alone. You're in very good company. But it's important that we don't panic. Now's the time for leadership and for courageous leadership. Throughout history, leaders that are remembered are the ones that led through times of crisis and helped, not necessarily with all the right answers. And I think this is the challenging thing that we're facing right now is all of us, including those of you watching this video, having to make decisions for your business where you don't have a how-to manual, you don't have
Mm.
past history necessarily to go on. You're going to have to make some tough calls as you look at the current circumstances, your client base, the situation we find ourselves in, and you're going to have to make some decisions. And some of them in time, maybe there might have been a better way. But the point is, we can't avoid making those decisions. That's where leadership comes in. And it's going to take courage. And if I want to say anything, and I think all three of us would want to say this to you, is you've got it in you. It's in you to do this. You're stronger than you realize. And what's really important, I think, in times like these is I think this is probably a time where leaders can feel the most alone. They often are trying to be strong for their teams, they're trying to be strong for their families, but the question becomes, who's strong for you? And so having that strong support, leaning on others in your community, leaning on trusted advisors that you have in your network, this is where this stuff really, really matters so that you can be that courageous leader at a very difficult time.
Eric, I love that you're using the language of courageous leadership because this is an uncertain time and there will be critics when leaders in these seasons make decisions. You may have employees in a business, you may have outsiders, clients, other individuals who criticize the decisions you make. The important thing is that you make the decisions that are right for your business, right for you, and recognize. And I love that you've already said this: is give permission to even make the wrong decision, as long as you're making the decisions that in the moment you are doing for the right reasons. And the critics will come, the critics will go. you can't make the decisions based on them. So I love that language of courageous leadership, and it is something that we need to embrace.
Well, I think it's clear all of us want to make the best decisions possible,
Hmm.
but unfortunately, again, with little to go on, sometimes, I mean, in the news cycle, it's changing. It seems in the last few days, it's changing moment by moment. Things are really escalating, and probably will be escalating more before they de-escalate. Um, you're going to make some wrong decisions in the process. This is just par for the course, but you can't not make a decision. That's the critical piece, is that you're called upon to lead in your business. And again, I think what's important is who you surround yourself during this time, so that you're not going through this by yourself. I think we're big fans of we're better together, and leaning on others who are going through similar circumstances. I mean, I know that's part of why we're recording this call. I know we're going to be recording others, gathering the community of leaders that we work with, trying to bring them together, because there is great strength in those numbers.
I know of a lot of people who are they're updating their Twitter feed kind of every 30 seconds right now, and
Right.
lo and behold, there's actual new updates every 30 seconds or so. And so I think to your point there, it's about filtering out the noise. It's getting
Right.
focused in on the things that really matter. I think as business owners, as leaders, those who take courageous leadership also have to decide who they are going to listen to, who will be those trusted advisors in their corner, what resources they're going to approach. I appreciate so much that our support team, I know at Rhapsody, has put together a blog post with some links to specific websites and information that business owners and leaders can get that are from reputable sources. That's so critical. It's being able to make sure that we're not overreacting to what is happening in the news feed, but again, we're able to take that time. I've got an Apple Watch, and every so often my Apple Watch kind of vibrates and it reminds me to breathe. And probably one of the best things that we can do during a season like this is to remind ourselves, even as leaders, to breathe, to take
Right.
a moment, to pause, to recognize that we are going to be okay. We don't
Right.
know what the path is to being okay will be. We don't know the journey that we're going to take. But in the end, we need to breathe. We need to pause. We need to surround ourselves with the right people in order to get the right information so that we can make the right decisions. And the more we do that, the more we will, I think, be able to, again, make those right decisions that will support our companies, our clients, our employees, our community at large.
So, guys, and let's make it a little more specific here, because we talk about who's your trusted advisors, who do you bring
Mm.
inside, because these are the critical moments, right? And you're, it so resonates with me when you're saying, people are going to criticize you because you're in a
Right.
leadership role in a difficult time. So there are going to be those, and you can see it already, saying you're overreacting,
Yeah.
and there are others who are saying you're underreacting.
Right.
I think in part our message is you'd better act, right?
Right.
No matter what else happens, this is the time not to stop acting, not to stop. This is still a time for motion and choosing and deciding. But who are we looking to when we bring people together? The trusted advisors that people need in these moments, right? The who do you turn to?
We always talk about the big four. Your
Yeah.
accountant, your business lawyer, your coach or consultant that you work with, and your financial advisor. Those are great sources who understand typically your business, understand your operations, and who can give you solid advice from a place of caring for you and your business, but not being in the weeds and being so emotionally invested that sometimes it's hard to see forward. So those are really great sources of support and information.
Yeah, and and at the risk of sounding self-serving, and I recognize that it can come across this way. Those that know us know that we really do run Rhapsody with integrity. Our desire is to serve and support the Men for More community, the business community at large. The including a coach in that list of strategic partners is something that we deeply, genuinely believe in. We have a coach outside of of Rhapsody that we turn to when we need advice and we need direction. Far too many, we've all been in this situation. We know clients or we know individuals who they turn to their spouse or to employees. And oftentimes in situations like this where you're making really difficult decisions, those are probably not necessarily the best people to turn to, adding additional burdens on them and struggles when it comes to making those decisions. So I think that a coach is absolutely critical in a season like that. And then, yes, an accountant who is engaged in your business, a lawyer who understands the ramifications of the decisions that you make. Financial advisors. There may be others that people have. And certainly, one of the things we mentioned, I think, earlier in this call, that we are going to be even gathering some business owners. We want to learn from some of the key people that we have worked with on some of the things that they do. And one of the things that we'll learn from them is who are other great strategic partners. What are the voices? Who are the voices that you should be including into your circle of where you're getting your information during this season? Don't discount it, though. Having the right people and making sure they are the right people who are not in it for themselves, but are in it for your best interest, is so critical when you are trying to take courageous leadership.
And I would just add one more thing to that. Don't discount the value of key members of your team being able to speak
True.
with great wisdom and insight into something like this. It's just often very wise to get some outside perspective, and then from the folks that are on the front lines of your business together. Usually that's how the best solutions emerge.
Clearly it's not a time to be alone. It's not a
Right.
time to
Right.
be the lonely leader off distance. Like quite ironically, in a context of social distancing, we we need to come closer together
Yeah.
to with the right people who are going to help us, and truly, as you quite rightly said, people who are in our corner who truly have our interests at heart.
Yeah.
And those are the people that you need right now, more than ever, we often use this expression. We'll say, if the business was sitting right here, it was sitting in this chair next to you, what's it trying to say to you? Right. And so there's these questions that the business is always asking. Those questions come in lots of different ways. And I guess maybe the question I'm posed to you guys right now is, what are the questions that businesses are asking leaders that need to be addressed right away? We're going to talk about quite a number over the course of the days ahead for sure. But what are some of the core ones that leaders need to be focused on immediately in response to what their businesses need?
I'd say the first one you need to be looking at is obviously asking about your cash flow, the strength of your business from a cash perspective, revenue perspective. There's a lot of businesses right now that are taking a big hit. Many of them that have had to shut their doors temporarily, and you can imagine the stress that puts the company under. But whether or not your doors are open or not, watching your spending and doing everything you can to eliminate non-essential spending. And I emphasize the word non-essential because cutting it off your expense line doesn't mean necessarily that's the best decision for the business. You may very well need that service or that product or whatever it is to continue to be flowing in order for your business to be resilient. But anything that's non-essential, anything that's extracurricular, there should be an immediate freeze on that, obviously, and monitoring your cash flow position very carefully.
Eric, let me
sorry.
jump in just for a second, Rob. There's a great expression that just, I think, so resonates with what you just said, Eric, which is no one ever cut their way to greatness. Right? You can't cut your way to success. There are prudent measures that you need to take in particular circumstances, but that prudence, that insight, that wisdom, and not to make it a short-term knee-jerk reaction about what we need to do, to be very thoughtful around it. I like how you say around non-essential. Do you actually know what is the essence of your business? Like, it raises a great question, which reveals a lot. Thanks,
Right.
Rob. Jump in.
Well, and that's a great question that you're asking right there about the essence of your business. We're hearing a lot about panic spending right now, and so the knee jerk reaction could be, I'm going to cut every expense I possibly can without asking some good questions. And I think Eric, you mentioned a couple as well of asking some questions before you cut. Maybe it's a software maybe it's a subscription to some service, whatever it might be, to be able to ask some questions. What's the value this is bringing? What is the, what was would be the impact of me not having this service or this product? Having certain questions you ask before you make the decision to cut. And then this is where you even mentioned about trusted some key employees or our trusted advisors having their input into what are some of the things that would make sense to put on pause or to cut, and to look at what those are. And so I think there's some really important questions. Don't do it out of panic. Don't do it out
Right.
of reacting, but do it out of what is what makes the most sense for your business.
And speaking of staff, one of the first places
Mhm.
that people are asking is how am I going to keep them, especially if cash is not strong and revenue's taking a big hit. How am I going to keep my people employed? And that's probably one of the most difficult questions because there's so many layers to it, not just the business operations and the feasibility of it, but there's all kinds of emotional layers tied to that because most leaders worth their salt, care about their people deeply, and the families that they represent. What I would say, I think we're all in agreement, is to do everything you can to keep your people employed where possible. And where you feel that that will be at risk, then to begin those conversations sooner than later with
Mm.
them about what are some potential options. Are there, part-time hours? Are there shorter work weeks available? Are there work from home arrangements? What are all the things that you can do to minimize that impact? I know that the government is promising now all kinds of support. We don't know what that's going to look like at the frontline level for businesses. It's too early to tell. I know that even BDC is offering short-term support, and we've got links about that on our website. But again, it's starting the conversation sooner than later. Go right back to where we started about courageous leadership. Now's not a time to panic. Now's not a time to react with deer in the headlights type of response. Where there are hard conversations to be had, you're better off starting them sooner than later.
And I think it's by having those conversations, by being honest and candid with your team, with your employees. I had a business owner that I saw post earlier today where they were struggling around: do I close? Do I stay open? And their biggest fear is, if I close, how do I help my employees? Because I won't have the revenue in. I just simply can't do it. And we're certainly seeing large corporations on social media, some of them being shamed or being criticized if they're not providing, continuing to pay the salaries of people that are being laid off. That's just, the reality is, a small business owner, that's oftentimes, most of the time, not in the cards to be able to continue to cover that. And it's important that you're not a bad person if you can't
Right.
do that.
Right.
That there are times and situations, and that's why, as you point out there, the government is stepping in to help to support people in those circumstances. But have those conversations. I think if the relationship between you and your team is good, those conversations will be healthy, and people appreciate the owner being honest and straight
Right.
forward and walking them through the process of what they're trying to do. And people get it, is that the last thing we want to see you do is lose everything in your business because you're trying to do good in short term and not be able to sustain things long term. And so make those decisions, but have the conversations with the right
Right.
There's so many competing elements, which
people.
is what adds so much complexity to the
Yeah.
situations. What does the business need? What does my team need? What do I need? What do my clients need? What does the community need? What does my country need? All of these things are actually stitched together and really brought to the foreground very quickly. The How do you communicate that? How do you communicate in a context where you have all of these different perspectives? Maybe some of them are conflicting. I'm not sure. There are different pieces depending on the business. That the interest of one may not be the same as other. What guidance are you guys giving right now, or what are you hearing? What are your thoughts on how to communicate in this kind of context?
I think you communicate carefully, and part of that is, I mean,
Yeah.
you think it through before sending out a blast email of any sort. Really be clear about the message. Be clear about what the timing of the message. But it's like what we said about employees. The sooner you can engage in a conversation and at least open the channels of the communication and keep those channels open as best as possible. I think that's where you create an environment where the best message will come through. Again, an open door of communication, even if mistakes are made in the process, they can be easily repaired, right? And taken, changed or modified as we go along based on changing information. But the key is to be initiating. Often it is better than waiting. And we're seeing that a lot in the marketplace right now. Businesses are doing a lot of them doing their best to communicate with clients the impact. And even in situations where some of the big box stores have had to close up shop, at least clients know and customers know and appreciate the communication. So you've got to think of timing, you got to think of content, but what's most important is create that channel, keep it open, and make sure that people can reach out to you readily.
And I would also add, use as a foundation for your communication. Kind of base it on the right information. Use the as we go back to, again, filtering out the noise. Don't send out a communication based on some video that you might have seen shared on Facebook or something. But go to the right sources. We often see a lot of the businesses are quoting either the Canadian medical recommendations or their local city health recommendations, and they're using those as the guide for the decisions they're making. And I think for most employees, most clients, most customers are going to respect, even if they disagree with the decision, they'll respect that you're using and you're basing it on the right information and not whatever information that's out there.
It really is not the time for amateur perspectives. I think this is a great moment to draw on the expertise that is around the world, that's in our own country, that is wholly dedicated to it, that has a full system, that understands the implications. And, if I were perhaps to offer a bit of a challenge to people, it would be, let's make sure we're not fanning any flames. Right. This is not a time for panic. This is not a time for fear. It's certainly a time for caution. It's certainly a time for prudence and wisdom and careful thinking and thoughtful action. But it's not a time for panic and fear. And I think more and more of that is actually working against communities, against individuals in the communities, against business, because it overinflates specific situations and starts to send the wrong message. And I think, some people say, well, perception is reality. I'm never quite sure what I think about that. I think reality is reality, and our job as leaders is to actually help people align their perception to reality. And so to help people see the truth of what's happening, but not to overinflate it as it goes as well. And I think whatever we can do as leaders to continue to support that, this is a powerful thing to do.
I think, Trev, that's brilliant. Just a final thought for me. It's right now, I think leaders are feeling probably haunted by what if scenarios.
Yeah.
What if this happens? What if that goes wrong? What if this gets worse? And those what if scenarios, it's hard not to get caught up in them. But the focus should be what now? What do I do now? What's the next step? What do I do this afternoon? What do I do tonight? What do I do tomorrow? Focused on deliberate, thoughtful action based on good counsel and solid thinking. You may not get it right every time, but you'll get it right a lot more times than you get it wrong. So instead of what if, focus on the what now.
Yeah, and if I would add, the only thing I would add as well to that is you're not alone. And I know we've said it a couple of times on this call. The three of us, we have been in meetings for most of the day today with our team together. Three of us in meetings, and I don't think any of us could stress it enough. Is that you're not alone as a business owner. You don't need to be alone. Community is what's so critical. And we are certainly here to support you. And I think that's our plan to do even throughout this week, is to be able to provide those messages of support.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Gentlemen, I want to thank you. I think the fact that we are together is makes a huge difference for all of us. We've all got different versions of this going on. We talked about earlier today, and the support from one another is essential. But that support isn't limited to the three of us. This is a support that is central to who we are as an organization, and we're going to continue to share information, good, reliable, pragmatic, actionable information that you'll be able to use in the course of leading your business as well. We can't stress enough, you're not alone. We're here for you as well. Let's continue to work together and stay calm, keep leading, don't stop. Thank
Right.
you.
Thanks.